Hey everyone, I'm about to make a gorgeous scrap soap. I hope you'll join me. This is probably the one of at least one of the most beautiful scrap soaps I think I've ever made. And you know, I don't like to brag about my soaps. I just really enjoyed this one and it was a lot of fun. Not too hard. There was one part that was and you probably will be better at that than me. Um we'll talk about that in a minute, but there are other ways to achieve a similar look. And you don't have to do a beach scene, but I chose to do a beach scene. I wanted to do a scrap soap using shredded soap, but using with very specific intentional colors. And I wanted to create a landscape type soap with that. And yeah, I did. I ended up choosing a beach scene instead of like a landscape versus seascape, because I did. It's just the image I came up with. I thought of several others. I thought of just doing like a couple of hills and a valley or mountains and a sunset or a variety of different things I could have done. But I went with the beach scene because, first of all, I love beach scenes. It's really still summer-ish. It's the end of summer. We're still at the end of August when I'm recording this. And so I figured, well, I might as well get in one last summer type soap since I kind of skipped a lot of summer soaps doing my clay series and they were just more general and less seasonal. So I'm throwing in one more beachy or summery type soap. Although I grew up, as many of you know, in St. Pete, Florida, and so beach wasn't necessarily limited to the summer, at least as far as viewing it. I might not get in the water, but we would definitely go take a walk on occasions or go out to dinner at the beach and then go watch the sunset. Not often enough, I say. When you live there, you don't always appreciate or take the time to indulge in the activities that you would if you were visiting. But um, quick note on the soaps here. All I'm doing is shredding soap for a long time here. Well, not a long time because I'm going to do. Here comes the hard part for me. Um, I shredded three different shades of kind of yellow and orange. They are a little different in reality. I could not catch the colors. I couldn't capture them really well. And you might have seen me earlier on when I first started shredding. I stopped and I kind of just paused. That's because I kept looking back and forth at the camera and the soap on the table live. And the camera and the soap, or not the camera, but the monitor I have, my TV that I look into when I'm filming. And yeah, it's not showing up properly. There's more of a variance. The yellow is a very nice bright neon yellow, and the orange is a little bit more orange, and the darker orange is more of a reddish orange. Anyway, um, I'm not going over too many of the colors. The only color I'm really talking about in this is the one I added, which is just Sparkle Sunshine. And I just stirred it into those scraps, into those shavings. And it really is a nice effect. Toward the very end, I add a little bit to the background, and I really love it. Love the way that came out. But um, I'm about to make I'm about to use a column mold. And while I have used column molds, it's been a very long time. And I've never used a column mold this narrow while trying to put things in it. I've used the narrower ones to pour soap into, just pouring maybe even two colors. But yeah, it proved to be a little difficult. And I'll do it again for sure because I love the way the look turned out gorgeous. Um, but the shreds did not want to go to the bottom very easily. I even had a tool handy to try to make sure I could get them down to the bottom, and it didn't work so well. But it was still successful because I'm just making a half loaf. It's like a cube, about a 4-inch cube, and you can make loaf soaps in any design that you're making in a in an 8-inch or 10-inch loaf. I shouldn't say any designs because it's harder to do swirls in those. You can do it, and marbling and stuff like that. It's just more difficult. But anyway, easy to do landscapes in those little half size loaf molds. And it's a nice way to test out designs, or if you just want to make a few soaps. Because for me, it made 3 very thick bars. Um, you might get 4 thinner bars out of it if you want, or if you, as you've seen me do before, I've also cut them in half, um, so that you can end up with 6 or 8 little mini bars, which are still quite substantial. They're not like sample size soaps. They're pretty decent size. Um, I'm moving my shreds out of the way. I hope I'm keeping up with the video. Again, still having issues with the glitchy stuff, so I apologize. There will be some glitchy stuff in the final product. I'm fairly certain. Um, but here we go. The thing that you see me stabilizing my column mold in is it's just one of the little cartons that comes with some of the fragrance oils I purchased. Depends on where you purchase from, but Wholesale Supplies Plus does send them in these little, they're almost like drink cartons, drink stabilizers, but it's very small and isn't going to hold up in that, of course. But I shoved paper towels around it that I had already used, so not just wasting paper towels. Um, but it did hold up that way quite well, because I really kind of packed it in there and it stayed. Even when I was shaking the table, as you'll see in a little bit when I go back to shredding soaps. But the column mold like that, typically you can place them in like a tall cup, or a tall something to kind of keep them from going anywhere. And I just didn't have one in the workshop, so I improvised, and that's what I do. I like to do, well, I don't know if I like to do that, but I end up doing that because it was easier for me. I don't excuse me, I don't live in my workshop anymore. So, well, I've never lived in my workshop, except there was a time when my workshop was my house, and that's no longer the case. So it's a little bit of a trek, not much, but I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave and go get a cup because that seemed silly. So you want something to hold your column mold up. Many people, and we're going to do a whole series on column molds soon, or at least one video using column molds, and then maybe one using those as embeds, one or two. But for now, I'm just giving this a try. I didn't think about the shreds being a difficult thing, other than like I said, I knew I might need something to shove them down in. You'll see when I unmold it what the problem was, but all I needed was that 4 inches, or it might be a little closer to 4.5 in this mold. It's not quite an even cube, and I can't remember if it's 4.5 by 4 or 3.5 by 4, something similar to that. Anyway, I just poured a little soap, shoved in some of the shreds, and alternated. Poured a little more soap, shoved in some shreds. You want it a little on the hot side, but not hot enough to melt those shreds. So that's what I did, and it worked ish. So we'll talk more in a minute when we pull that out. But you might recognize this blue bar of soap that I am shredding. It was a pour over from the kitty cat soap that I made a couple weeks ago. It's what I used for the sky, and you may remember I was back and forth with the color. I didn't want it to look too much like the nebula little butterflies I'd made, so I kept altering it to not be quite so brilliant, of a blue or lavenderish blue periwinkle kind of color, which would have made a beautiful sky. But when you have little nebula butterflies that you want to stand out from it, you try to fix it. So that's the color I ended up with. It looks much bluer here, and even as I was shredding it, than it does in the final product. The final product, it almost looks white. I don't know if that's just because of the brighter blues that end up next to it, but it still ends up looking cool, and like a sky. my original plan was to do a full sunset with sunset colors within the sky, but I ended up using a lot more of the ocean layers than I thought, and it took up more space than I thought. So the horizon actually ends up at the top of the soap, instead of just kind of in the middle of the soap, which is where I had planned. But you can put the horizon wherever you want in a soap as long as you plan around it or figure out, how to accommodate for it. You can put it at the top, you can put it at the very bottom. You could have the very base of your soap be the horizon and put half of a sun or something at the very bottom, like you don't even see the sea or the land beneath it and have just sky, just have sunset. Many ways to incorporate a sunset into a landscape soap, and this is just one. So the little white soap, the little cube there that I had, that's the only one that hadn't been used. And the reason I didn't feel bad using it in this soap, like it's not getting a real second life, is because it was the last little cube I had of one particular type of soap, and I could have blended it in with some other white type soap bases because you can blend them, but I thought, well, it's right here and I need white, so I just used it. That little white is going to be the surf, basically, as the waves crash and you get that foam, the white foam that comes up a little bit as those waves are crashing or rising up on the shore. That's what that's going to represent. The little tan one there is a clay soap I had an extra of, and normally I probably would have used an oatmeal soap because that's my favorite thing to use for sand in an ocean or um, anything I've used with sand in it, ocean, koi pond, variety of beach scenes, etc. Um, but I didn't have one, so I used a clay soap, which still had some little grains of stuff in it. I think Rasul clay, and it still looked cool and still looks like the sand, I think, anyway. Like I said, I was very pleased with all of the choices I made with this. It isn't exactly what I expected, but it came out just as good or better. So there goes very thin layer of the foam, of the ocean foam or the waves crashing, whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't need much. In fact, I probably could have gone with less and gotten away with it. Same with the sand. I could have gone a little less with that, but it was hard to know. I wanted to make sure it would show up, especially being kind of the base of the soap, the foundation of it. I wanted to make sure it wasn't real splotchy or spotty. As we go up with the layers, it's kind of fine if they combine a little bit. I even do that on purpose in one of the places. I add some of the blues. I mix some of them together, and include them separately, so it's kind of makes it more of a gradient. Um, but we've got a beautiful aqua soap that was just one I had used in a little cup and had too much of. So I always save those, and I always use them. You don't always get to see me using them, so I've been trying more often to show you when I'm using up scrap soaps because you see me save them a lot. You see me with leftovers quite frequently, and so I like to show how I use them so that you can do the same if you end up with leftovers. Some people are so great at their measuring or estimating, and they don't ever have extras of anything. That's not me. I would always rather have extra than not enough because I've run into trouble when I didn't have enough, and to try to melt some at the last minute, it usually, maybe I wouldn't say destroys the look of the soap, but it definitely compromises it and changes the look I intended for or intended it to be. So I always try to have a little bit extra on hand. Because it just, I don't know, once it sets up sometimes, because it's going to set up while you're melting another couple squares of soap. But anyway, I'm just going along here with this was a soap I used to carry. I don't carry it anymore, and I just had one left, and I could have just used it for myself because I really like it. Has a little bit of sea salt in it, It's a marvelous soap. I may make some more down the road, but it's not like a staple in my inventory anymore. So this one little one just got shredded up, and I use it again in a minute because I'm going to mix it with the darker blue shreds, and it gives a neat look, I think, in the end when you combine some of the colors um, as you're layering. I did not try too hard to make the layers perfectly even. I did want coverage across each layer. Like, really important if you're doing this to make sure that each layer gets in the corners. When it comes to shreds, it's easy for them not to go into the corners because the soap will flood into the corners easily enough. But if you're using shredded soaps or other kinds of embeds you that are tiny like this, you want to make sure they get into the corners because they won't always go on their own. You really kind of have to cram them in there a little bit. So that's what I did with each layer. I tried to make sure of that. I did intentionally put I don't know if it even shows in the final product or if it matters, but I tried to make the sand a little bit off, a little bit askew so it wasn't perfectly flat. I kind of wanted like a little hill or something. I don't remember that showed up in the pictures in the cut. But I'll look when we get to that point and see if I can remember what I did, or see if it shows. If it doesn't, who cares? Doesn't matter. Um, it it came out to be what I wanted. So the look I was going for with all these shreds, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too much about the shreds and not enough about the design, but I wanted, and I've wanted to try this forever. Wanted to try an impressionistic painting. If you don't know Impressionism, or the Impressionists, think Monet, um, and you just look them up. Just look up Impressionism. You're going to find any of the artists that you see that use little bits of color. Little dots is really pointillism, not impressionism. But I it might be a category of impressionism. I'm not sure. I'm not an art major, and but I know enough about art that I wanted to create an impressionistic soap. I will do more of these, by the way. I am going to do one of the Monet's water lilies. Haven't decided which one, or if I just want to come up with my own based on the design. But those are about my favorites in the world. I just love them. But here is. I'm hoping you saw the clear soap at the end spilled out. The clear at the very bottom was the only part that wasn't set up. I don't know why the shreds didn't get down far enough. Maybe my spoon wasn't as long as I thought it was. I felt it hit bottom. So I thought I was safe with that. But either way, the rest of it was solidified and beautiful. So I just peeled it up and cleaned up the mess that I had there of clear soap, and again saved that to put in another because that is a viable scrap. And yeah, and it wasn't perfect, the cut, but it doesn't matter. You'll see it doesn't make a difference because you're looking at that sun from the end, and it doesn't look like it's not fully across. It's just a little diagonal in the cut, and that's because I don't always cut straight. So there you go. And I needed to melt a little bit of extra soap here for the top layer. I wanted to be sure, first of all, it needed to be hot enough to make sure that sun sticks in there and without melting the shreds. That's a fine balance. You're going to have to play with your own soap base on that. I kind of went between like 130, um, between 130, 135 at one point where it was a little hotter. And as you're pouring in, it cools. It's okay as it's cooling, as long as you're not adding something big like the big embed. If it's cooling as you're adding the shreds, as long as it pours okay. You saw my one spot where it didn't pour okay, and I just pulled out that little blob and heated everything up again, and it was fine. So this little thing, I had somebody guessing that my sunset was a volcano. And I think that's because I put this little layer in here. What I intended here is for that to be a little bit of the reflection of the sun on the water. Um, so I think it worked. I liked the way it looked, but it made it almost look like a little mound or triangle instead of. But I think this circle stands out quite well. But that's just me. Um, and these soaps aren't for sale, so it won't matter. Nobody needs to buy them if they don't like them. But I guess it would make a cool looking volcano, except I would think that the volcano should be black or white or another color other than the lava. But that's what someone saw in it. Um, but I added some sunshine sparkles again to this part, to the clear, because I wanted a little sparkle at the top, and wow, does it look really cool. I think it really shows up in the pictures when you get toward the end and I'm showing the close-ups. The glitter almost takes on a life of its own. You really shimmers in the light. So that I was really pleased with. Um, Here's your sky now. I toyed around with the idea of putting it all the way across the top, but I didn't. I'm kind of glad I didn't, but you know, I don't know. I can't quite picture in my head what that would have looked like, but I'm very pleased with what it did end up looking like, which is just kind of a sky. Don't have room really for the reflection, the colors of the reflection. Although I had a little bit of the shreds of the sun color in there, but it wasn't really enough to show up. I could have done that or added a little pink and purple, something like that. But I didn't, because I had planned, like I said, to put the sunset a little lower and shred some pink and purple and intentionally put it in there in little lines or layers. Anytime you want a line in a landscape soap, you put it as a layer and it will end up as a line. Um, ish. So that was my original plan, but like I said, I'm thrilled with the way it came out, so I'm not complaining. I may try one down the road that has the horizon a bit lower and focuses more on the sunset. That I don't know. I don't know. If I do that, that'd probably be a while because we're now getting into fall. I've made my first fall soap, and probably after this video posts for everyone on Wednesday, I'll probably go ahead and post the picture of that because I was thrilled with the way that came out too. I was very happy. 2 soaps in a row. Woohoo! Um, anyway, I'm just trimming the edges here. You don't have to. For me, it's easier to trim this way. I do end up trimming it a little more after, but you could leave it. It'll have a little funky side. It looks like it's coming over the edge, and that might have looked really cool, but I didn't want to do it like that. I just wanted a kind of a slab soap, which is what it ends up being. Slab soap with a little bit of extra fluff on top. Now, I don't know if you noticed when I was pouring that last layer with the glitter, I did go over all of those shreds. So they're glued in. And, with the exception of what I'm doing now and cutting off the little edges, it sticks really well. It sticks when I cut it. It's not, I haven't wrapped them yet. They're sitting in a baggie, but I know they're very solid and I know they're not going to pull off when I wrap or as you use the soap. It's, I tend to flood a soap like this, if I'm bringing it over the top, I tend to add more, enough to where I know it's got made contact with all of the soap shreds or whatever I'm putting at the top. That's just the way I do it because I like it to be really steady. That's not the right word, but I guess it is. But stable, I guess is what I'm going for. Here we go. It's coming out of the mold. I could tell before it came out of the mold that I was going to love it because even at that side without the sun, that definitely looks like the ocean to me. And it really gave the the impressionistic look I was going for. Uh, if you look up the style of painting, there's multiple styles within that. Some of your Van Gogh and stuff like that. Some of his has this type of look to it. Um, but any artist who uses very small bits of color to create a larger scene instead of painting a full cloud, you're painting dots of color or slashes of color within that to create a cloud, and you use various shades to represent that so that it doesn't look like just one big chunk. I love that look, and I really love it now that I tried it in a soap. Um, like I said, you'll definitely be seeing more from me with this. I I don't know if I can fit another one in before creating all the holiday stuff. I may or may not. Depends on how many Halloween things I want to do. I always like to do at least a few. I have way too many ideas in my head that I want to get out. And there's such a short time in the Halloween season before they're, kind of null and void, I guess. Not really, but, so there we are. I will show some close ups in a minute. This is already close up. I tried doing this one in it, having the camera closer up because it is kind of a small mold that's deep. So I wanted to make sure you could kind of see what I was doing with the layers. And that's why it's so kind of in your face. I hope that it works to see everything I was doing, and you will see at the end when I'm bringing them for close-ups and holding them up there for a little bit for you to get a real intricate look or look at the intricate details of it. It's really big. So get ready for some soaps in your face. And here they go. That was perfect timing. um, take a peek at the sun. You can see the circle, and you can see, excuse me, oh, my allergies are rough. Um, you can see how the shreds almost are forming like little stripes or little circles or little details to the sun that you could spend hours painting something like that, but to get it just by shoving some shreds in a column mold, I think is really cool. It gives it a lot more dimension and depth. I just think it is a really fun technique. The the darker blue soap that almost looks black is really more of a navy. It's probably a little darker than it should be, but I don't care. um, from the sand and then the white foam, and then as you move up to the lighter layers and then get darker, my image with that is the shallow water on the edge of the ocean, on the edge of the beach, I mean, as as those waves are crashing, that, it's lighter. It's almost clear at times. I mean, it is really clear if you're at the beach and you have waves washing up that are small. Like on the Gulf Coast of Florida, you have it's very mild, those waves, and it's clear really, but that's not going to give the image of the beach for a soap. But a lighter color is what I went with, and then darker. The further out you go, the darker the color gets. Typically, that's just the typical look, and so that's why I did a variety of colors throughout the ocean and getting gradually darker as I went. Um, I feel like it works. It's a little bit like shadowy, way out in the depths, on this one because, like I said, it's a little darker than I thought, but I still think it works. This was the I didn't expect that side to look good because when you're doing and this, yeah, I think this is the right. I can't tell now. When you're doing a soap that's a landscape or any kind of design within a cube like that, or a loaf mold, the ends usually don't look very good, and these did. It was surprisingly look good, so I was pleased with that. Although I like the internal cuts better, but anyway, they came out nice, I think. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you'll try this design. Not necessarily this design, but something like it. Use your scrap soaps in a creative way and play with the idea of an impressionistic painting. It's not as difficult as you would think. This certainly looks more complicated. Anyway, thank you for stopping by.